Good afternoon. Today we're going to be looking at Charlie Kirk. Now, I have to admit that I had no idea who Charlie Kirk was until somebody shot him. And I really felt sorry for anybody being shot as a political character. That kind of thing should not happen. However, they really got my attention when they took Jimmy Kimmel off the air. And Jimmy Kimmel is my favorite late night comic. And in fact, I find the late night comics are better at interpreting the news than most newspapers that I read, and I read a lot of news outlets. So having found that whatever it is that Kimmel was alleged to have said caused his demise on TV, I talked Corey into let's look into who Jimmy Kimmel is and who is Mr. Kirk.
I'm like you. I didn't know much about Charlie Kirk. I did know there was a activist going around to universities and promoting conservative movement at the universities and high schools, and that's about all I knew about him until I had the unfortunate incident happened. So I guess part of what our podcast is, we want to discuss is Charlie Kirk the saint or the activist in the news. It seems to be the basis of what's going on in the U.S. in many regards. And we don't condone the act of violence, but there is a war going on in the U.S. right now for the hearts and minds of youth, the citizens, and it seems to be a lot of religious base to a lot of the activism that's going on. Now, you may or may not like the fact that Jimmy Kimmel was taken off the air, but how he was taken off is more important than the fact that he was taken off, and that is that the FCC, under the guidance of Trump, put pressure on Disney, ABC, to take him off the air. And that leads us to the issue of the lawsuits that Trump has launched against media outlets, and then they capitulated by paying him millions of dollars to not have problems down the road with them. I think that's an issue that people should be concerned about because it shows that the media is biased now and caters to the dictatorship and fascist regime of Donald Trump. What's your take on some of that?
Well, as far as I could see, Trump has been trying for the last maybe 6 months to try to bury Epstein for once and for all. He's been unsuccessful. He's had one distraction after another after another. And to me, Jimmy Kimmel was just another distraction. He was trying to deflect from the Epstein files. And when you look at what Kimmel said, uh, I can understand why I thought what he said was a good political comment. In fact, he said essentially MAGA is doing everything it can to distance themselves from the individual, from the shooter, saying that he's not one of theirs. So you want to paint him as a left-wing radical, somebody that stands in the way of progress and distance themselves from the mega movement. The fact of the matter is, nobody knows. But another interesting sideline to this is Netanyahu felt obliged to do two press conferences denying Israeli involvement in the shooting, yet they claim that this Kirk character was a friend of Israel. So you got to wonder, what's going on over there, and the fact that
Um,
they're killing, they're killing TV shows based on the fact that the president doesn't like being made fun of. That's a horrible sign for a society, in my opinion. And even
well, Trump announced that he was going to get rid of Kimmel after he got rid of Colbert,
yes,
and now you've seen it happen. And at what stage is he going to follow through with all his other suppression of media? I mean, if you don't think it can happen to you, it can happen to us in Canada, and it can happen in any democracy around the world. It did happen to me, the suppression by the media years ago. The Alberta government put pressure on the TV stations in Edmonton, threatening them to remove ads I had on for dance instruction because they were opposed to it because it was a religious taboo back in the 80s. Dance was not something the religious element wanted promoted. And they literally threatened the TV station with pulling their CRTC license if they didn't remove my ads that were paid for in advance. And that was suppression. You never heard of it, and you never got any of my dance material. So there are ramifications and pressure from organizations, and it happens in politics all the time. And what I have found, it's always religious based. The minute religion and politics cross roads, there's always problems because the righteousness of the religious fractions say that they know what's best for everybody, and removing my TV ads against the law, and you have no recourse against the government for removing them, is not any different than the stuff that's going on right now by Trump in the US. So yes, folks, it can happen to you here. It happened to me. So I just wanted to get that in because people have to realize that what's happening in the US is trickling up here into Canada, in part or in whole.
Well, Trump doesn't wants any network, any broadcaster suspended for any reason that offends him,
Yes.
and that means networks like CNN could be next. But on Fox News, you can call for the genocide of the homeless people in America, and you don't even need to apologize, and you still keep your job. So, the American freedom is slipping quickly, and what's shocking almost is even the morons understand this.
Yeah.
Ted Cruz, Ted Cruz is you know it's hard to find the words to describe that guy, and one of the best shots they had of him, and it was the comics that showed it, was when he was sneaking off for a holiday in the Caribbean. Well, Texas was being ravaged by a tornado or hurricane or something, right? And instead of sticking around and doing his job, he was going on a holiday. So it's yeah, I don't know.
Well, in my opinion, the root of the problem, and it's very simple. When you allow lies to be your media and promoting lies that you know are intentional lies or deception that is intentional deception, that is a criminal act, especially when it's at the base of inciting violence or actions against identifiable people. That's almost hatred, but it's lies. And we as a society have now accepted that any politician can lie, and yet there's a politician is sworn to uphold the country and the laws of the country, and they're the highest level of the courts in the country. And if they're representing the highest level of the courts in the country and they're lying, that's a form of perjury. And that perjury needs to be prosecuted to prevent this type of rhetoric and promotion of hatred and lies that are intended to deceive people and make the politicians empowered by the ability of lies. And I guess the ultimate liar and promoter of hatred and lies is Trump himself. And we've seen where his lies have got him convicted for fraud. He is a felon. And these type of acts need to be reevaluated. They need to be totally held to account in the courts. And liars should have their pants on fire. They should never get away with it. And I think the soap opera drama of TV has drawn the media outlets into their own demise. They love the promotion that Trump would have something new and stupid on the air 2-3 times a day, because now there is reason for people to watch the stupidity of the soap opera playing out in real life. And that made money for all media stations. Their advertisers, their billionaires, pumped a lot of money into ads in a dying venue. Like media was dying due to social sites like YouTube and everything becoming more popular, social media was taking away the revenue sources of the general media. And that's why they gravitated, I think, to Trump, because of the stupidity, the lies, the promotions, the whatever was a big soap opera drama that they could capitalize on, and they bought into it. But now the pendulum has swung so far that now the media are losing out as a result of it. So that's my take of what's transpired. It's time for change. Back
Well,
to enforcing laws. Liars should not be allowed the right to lie without penalty.
well, and the thing is too, I mean, people should be allowed to say basically anything that they want within reason. But by way of example, when Democrats get shot, assassinated, or assaulted, Trump blames it on the radical left. He doesn't blame it on the radical right.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, the shooters' parents were both registered Republicans. So
Right.
you can imagine what they'd be saying if they had been Democrats. It's
Oh,
it's the country's divided themselves between North and South again.
yes, and it's a North-South Civil War. And it's only a matter of time. This may be the start of, you have to pick a side and you have to defend yourselves in the US. That's their minds. They got military in the streets. They're arresting random people just by skin color. There's going to be more and more of this escalation because of emotional lies and hatreds and fueling the fire of hate. And we're just seeing the start of it with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. It's wrong, folks, but you're at war in the US. And if you don't know you're at war, you're even in worse shape, because your rights and liberties are being taken away from you. And Trump is a fascist regime in all definitions. And the stealing of your rights is what's going on right now. And that means you're at war. And that war is carrying to the streets. And I can see it happening. I wouldn't go to the US at all because it's a war state. Do you remember that time we went across the border? I'd never been to the States, folks. And I went across the border, and we were going to Windsor, or to, what's the name of that? Detroit. And I'm from Alberta. I'm going to Detroit, and we pull up to the US border guard, and we pass him our identification, what have you. And he told us that if a car bumps into you at a red light, just drive through the red light. If somebody walks up to your car, roll up your window and drive through the red light. If there's a gunfight going on, go to the nearest policeman and stay as close to the police as you can. I'd never been to the US, and I go through the tunnel and I come out and it looked like a goddamn war zone. There was brick buildings half there. It looked like a nuclear bomb had gone off. And this is like 15 years ago that I did this, and I was amazed that the culture of gun and violence in the US was so rampant. And you know what, folks? 15 years later, it's even worse now. So I just wanted, I really would be afraid to go to the US if it was me. And that one trip I took through where it was a nuclear war zone in Detroit opened my eyes as to what gun violence and oppression and racism and all this US holier than thou shit that's being promoted by the religious nut bars in politics is about. And you've seen it right on the streets of Detroit. It was a real eye opener for me.
An interesting thing is, Cox is the name of the Utah governor, and
Right.
and of course they're a very, very conservative state. And
Well, Utah, I'll just interject. Utah is the most religious state according to a new study. Utah is recognized as the most religious state in the United States, with 76.1% of the population identifying as adherents of a religion. This figure is 12 percentage points increase from the next highest state, Alabama. So that shows the affiliation of religious in Utah.
The thing is about Utah is they're Mormons. So it was the birth of Mormonism, so to speak, after they trekked out of New York, Syracuse, New York. But the interesting thing for Cox's comment, the governor, he
Mhm.
said that 4 days after Kirk was shot, he said there's been too many trans people committing mass shootings in the U.S. was his comment, and according to the Gun Violence Archive, only 0.1% of such shootings over the previous decade had been allegedly
Yeah.
carried out by trans people. So trans people basically aren't doing these types of crimes.
No.
It's not. It's a crime of a religious fanatic or a political fanatic, and it's a shame that they put these together and try to make it a political
But that's a
statement
lie.
against an identifiable group. Yeah, it's a lie.
Yeah, it's a lie promoting hatred. That's a crime. And why aren't these politicians and public figures and news stations that are covering this be prosecuted for allowing in the promotion of such blatant lies that are inciting people to hatred and the commission of crimes of violence? So there's, folks, how you deal with the situation. You got laws, start enforcing the laws. Not a two-tier legal system where the rich like Trump never face prosecution. I mean, Trump should be brought to the courts on the Epstein file. There's probably enough evidence right now to convict him before a jury of his peers, because, you know, it sure looks like he knew everything that was going on, and there's money transaction between him and Epstein, and there's these illustrations in the birthday books, and there are prosecutors that are giving sweetheart deals to Epstein. This can only happen when money people are behind the wheel of justice. So that wheel of justice has definitely been turned to the favor of the wealthy. And where are those Epstein files? All this distraction, it's all about the Epstein files. I mean, did you see in the news, Trump ordered the blowing up of another fishing vessel off Venezuela? So that's a third boat that they just blow up so they don't have to produce any evidence, because they know there's no evidence of drug smuggling on those boats. They just blow them up. So, folks, this is all smoke and mirrors to the real fact that you've got a felon president in the United States, and he wants everybody silenced, including Kimmel, and that's the facts.
I get a kick out of how they say that the shooter had left wing leanings, and you have to ask yourself, what is left and what is right by the definitions of American politics. And I guess if you're not anti-abortion, you're left wing.
Yeah,
If you're not in favor of civil rights,
right.
you're right wing. So it's one of those things, and you actually looked into some of the comments that Charlie was making.
Yes, like on CBC, there was an article, some of Charlie Kirk's most controversial takes. Well, he goes on, even though there's death by guns in the US, that many war zones in the world do not have the consistent annual deaths on the streets as the US has. Charlie Kirk also, in December 2023 political conference hosted by Turning Points USA Group, which he was a member of, Wired magazine reported that Kirk decried not only Martin Luther Jr. King, calling the activist leader an awful and not a good person. And you remember, those are a lot of the same words Trump always says about people that he's slandering or calling down. But also the Civil Rights Act of 1965 that outlawed discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, and national origin, and prohibited segregation. Kirk stated, "I have a very, very radical view on this, but I can defend it. And I've thought about it," Kirk said. "We made a huge mistake when we passed the Civil Rights Act in the 1960s. Kirk argued the statute had brought about what he said was a permanent bureaucracy meant to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. Well, that's pretty much a totally radical viewpoint on civil rights, where you're saying that they should have never been granted civil rights. That's pretty much promoting identifiable hatred against identifiable people. He also goes on, he's got abortion rights he faced off against 25 liberal colleges to defend his viewpoints, which include the belief that abortion is murder and should be illegal, including in cases of rape. So he's in support of a girl being raped at 12, getting pregnant, and having to bear the child of the rapist, which says a lot about the character of his demeanor, and that he is pretty much following a religious format in his positions, which is what most conservative movements now around the world are. They're hidden religious empowerment of a political body to try to institute religious rights and privileges within the constitutions of government now. And then he goes on, he was also women and fertility collapse. Kirk also frequently spoke about what he called a fertility collapse in the West. Young women, they don't value having children. Trump voters, young men, they want family, children, and legacy. Young women who voted for Kamala Harris, they want careerism, consumerism, and loneliness. I mean, what he's basically saying from that paraphrase seems that he's in support of women getting pregnant and you having to be subservient to your husband. He goes on further to say, he said that he hoped marriage would make Taylor Swift, more conservative and encourage her to reject feminism, submit to her husband, Taylor. You're not in charge, he states. I can't wait to go to a Taylor Kelsey concert, he said. You've got to change your name. If not, you don't really mean it. So he is very radical in his ideas, and he promotes that young women should be bearing children for any man, and that points back to, about the rapists and culture of women ownership that Trump and his supporters have on the religious end, and that's part of the Epstein support for abuse of young people by rape and violence. And that is something that the overtone should be, you should be charged under the laws when you're promoting underlying violence or abuse of people by your stances in public figures. And this Charlie was notorious for it. And then about Gaza, Kirk was garnered backlash for supporting Israel backing its nearly 2-year campaign in Gaza. He was described by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Wednesday as a lion-hearted friend of Israel. Netanyahu said he spoke to him 2 weeks ago and invited him to visit Israel. Kirk fought the lies and stood tall for Judeo-Christian civilization, Netanyahu said. His boundless pride in America and his valiant belief in free speech will leave a lasting impact. On July 28th, Kirk posted a video on X saying, no, Israel is not starving Gazans, amid calls from humanitarian organizations to avert further starvation and famine in the region. I mean, that sums it up. I mean, this guy's characters were weighed, measured, and found really wanting. And is it a surprise that he would be targeted? I find it not surprising at all. And he also promoted the conspiracy theories of COVID-19, frequently sharing conspiracy theories on social media. And he was briefly banned on some platforms like Twitter for spreading misinformation. Misinformation, folks, is lies. And lies are something that the courts do not appreciate, and they need to be prosecuted. And the day we let lies go is the day we've given up our rights to government that's fair and equitable. in March 2020 posted that about the China virus, a phase that was quickly adopted by U.S. President Donald Trump, then in his first term. I mean, that's promoting hatred towards China as being where the virus came from, and we still to this day are not really sure what happened. He was also supporting the debate that the 2020 election was won by Trump. So he was out promoting that insurrection movement to try to overthrow the government of the elected government of the people of the U.S. So this is the character of a person that they're wanting to say is a hero for the U.S. and a saint. I think I've answered my part of the title. Is he a saint or a activist? I say he's an activist, and he was targeting young kids and university kids as his targets, which reminds me of Hitler's movement for youth, where he tried to control and educate and brainwash the youth to support his agendas. And to me, this is what Kirk was doing.
Anyways, aside from that reason, people will probably remember that Nancy Pelosi, she was a Democratic senator, speaker. Her husband got attacked in his house, hit with a head in a broom. And this is what Trump said at a primary in California: "We'll stand up to crazy Nancy Pelosi, who ruined San Francisco. How's her husband doing? Anybody know?" Trump said to a crowd in California Republicans. And then he went on to say, "And she's against building a wall at our border, even though she has a wall around her house, which obviously didn't do a very good job." So now that's a direct reference to a Democratic person who was injured in their own home. Now, when
That
you
sounds
look
like
at,
promoting more violence
of course it is,
and targeting.
let's look at exactly at what Kimmel said. Kimmel basically said a ridiculous comparison in a way, right? He essentially said they're trying not they're trying their best not to make it sound like this kid is one of them. Now, how does that get turned into hate speech? Like
I don't get it.
I don't get it either.
I
I
see him
think
as, in my definition of MAGA, he was apparently supporting Trump, and his family supported Trump, so that's MAGA. And the fact that he was pissed off at certain points of fanaticism of this individual promoting to whatever ideology to university students, of which he, I think, was a university student, doesn't mean he wasn't MAGA. It just means he was, something triggered him to enact what he did. I mean, it's not, we can't condone what he did, but I guess over time we'll find out what his motivation for his actions were.
here's verbatim. Kimmel said, "The MAGA gang were desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and trying to score political points from it." And then he went on to say that Trump's reaction to the activist's death was how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish. Now, what they showed was the clip where they asked Trump about Charlie, and he said, "Yeah, well, that's really really sad. Look at the new building. We're building a ballroom on the White House." Like he just
Well,
he
Kimmel
had
got it
nothing.
right, but it's more the
Of course he
reaction
did.
of a 2-year-old, not a 4-year-old. So
Of course he did. Now they're saying that he misled the American people. Misled them how? All he did was characterize what the governor of Utah had actually said, and that is that it was a leftist person when they didn't even know.
the FBI announced they got some radical person that was from whatever before they even actually had the actual perpetrator of the crime. They were going around saying it was, you know, was Democrat backed people that they were arresting. I just,
Well,
propaganda,
even
folks, is the start of fascism, and even Putin and that uses this method, and Trump is trying to emulate it. You know, like
Well,
it's a
and
war on the streets.
here's the thing too. Even Cruz acknowledges that for the FCC to say we're going to take them off the air, so ABC cannot broadcast anymore. He says we can do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way. And Cruz goes, "That's right out of Goodfellas." It's
Yes.
like a man of mafioso coming to the bar. Nice
Mm,
bar you have here. It'd be a shame if something happened to it, you know.
yeah.
And for a guy like
And that's what was
Cruz,
threatened to ABC, and they immediately reacted because they knew the next step was they were going to lose their license and we're going to have to pay extortion to Trump to get it back to go back on the air. So it's
well,
going to
Ted,
cost them millions and millions of dollars. I think the last settlement Trump got from somebody was 16 million for something that was they would never uphold in court, and that reminds me. Uh, why are the courts allowing out of court settlements to cover up crimes just to save money that it would cost people to defend themselves and they probably win? And that, like why would they allow these type of things when it's blatantly illegal? So the courts are now turning a blind eye to illegal acts by having contracts cover up the acts. And the reason I'm bringing that up is under the Epstein thing, Trump paid out a lot of money to silence his accusers. And are those contracts legal or illegal? And I think the court should say, or the Senate or the House should say, those contracts are illegal in the covering up of the commission of a crime against youth. And they should be all opened up. All the contracts should be opened up, and all the allegations laid against Trump should be made public again and be brought before the House or the Senate or the courts to find out if those allegations were true or false. And that's something the courts can do, but it goes back to the wealthy can buy the silence of the lambs and fleece the lamb.
so in any event, people may recall that Cruz actually ran against Trump at one time, and
Yeah.
Trump was insulting Cruz's wife, and they were calling each other names and idiots and that sort of thing. When Trump won, Cruz was at the altar, kissing the feet, and so you have to wonder why he would make this statement against Kimmel getting thrown off TV, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a self-serving reason. He says, going down this road, there will be a time when the Democrats will win again, win the White House, and they will silence us. They will use this power and they will use it ruthlessly. And it's
Oh, I
dangerous,
hope
Cruz
they
said.
do. I hope
So,
they
yeah,
bury
so,
this once and for all. This corruption needs to stop, and it needs
well,
to
he's not
stop.
but he's not standing up for the First Amendment rights.
No,
He's trying to avoid the vengeance of the other party when they finally get
yeah,
into power. So it's I mean, it goes to show the quality of the man, right? He's not standing up for the right to free speech.
no.
He's trying to stop the potential use of the power that they're developing.
Like,
If because face it, if Trump fails in this coup in the U.S., the Democrats will eventually take over, and it may happen at the midterms, and then they'll flip the table.
like I said, they're never letting go of power. Trump will never hold an election, and he'll try to rig the ballot count. He'll put people in to count the ballots and destroy ballots so that it shows he won. I mean, he's already tried to overtake the government in a armed insurrection that he incited and promoted. Do you think honestly, folks, that Trump isn't going to make sure that people are counting the ballots in his favor, and any ballots that are needed to be destroyed in the counting process to see that he wins will be destroyed by his cronies? That is what's going to happen, folks. You are not going to depose Trump from power ever in the U.S. That's why I say it's just the tip of the iceberg now. It's
But if you
military
look,
on the streets and guns in hands, and you don't even know when you're being arrested and whether you're going to Alligator Alcatraz or shipped to some country and thrown in a jungle somewhere, never to be seen again. That's going on in the street.
but back to my favorite late night comedian getting thrown off the air.
Yeah.
One of the Republicans said that, and it's an interesting comment, is that conservatives stand for free speech and 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 well, he was criticizing the fact that they they kicked him off the air,
Right.
they're saying that if you stand for free speech, well, the exact quote is, the conservative position is free speech, and we better be careful about any lines we cross in diminishing free speech. And another senator said, well, it's an employer employee issue. It's got nothing to do with free speech. So the thing is, when you look at how these people are approaching this, the the sad news is that they have totally taken away from the fact that a man was assassinated. They've
Yeah.
changed the news narrative away from this person and turned it into an uproar over a late night comic. So it from that side, it's another distraction, and it's another distraction that Trump needs to stay away from the Epstein scandal.
And then there's a possible false flag operation underway now too. There's a news release today that the Jerusalem Post posted gunfire hits ABC studio in Sacramento following Jimmy Kimmel's suspension. The ABC 10 offices in Sacramento were hit with gunfire where a protest had been held against the network's suspension of Jimmy Kimmel Live, the Sacramento Bee reported Friday. The protest in California's capital saw over a dozen people protesting outside. No one was wounded in the incident. 3 gunshots penetrated the building, and no more additional information or suspects information has been released. And any act of violence toward journalism is attack on our democracy itself and must be condemned in the strongest terms, California Governor Gavin Newsom's office said in response to the incident. We stand with reporters and staff who work every day to keep communities informed and safe. Now, is that a false flag operation? Could be. Is it war on the streets? Could be. People are taking stances now, and they should not be shooting at offices at all. Somebody could accidentally be shot or hurt that's an innocent bystander. So there's some real issues going on in the U.S. right now.
Another thing too is the American news cycle is so short that they've managed to bump the war in Ukraine and the war on Gaza out of the news with a fight over a late night comic. Like
Yeah.
it's so far blown out of proportion, and there have been jokes that have been maybe a little too soon. People find offensive.
Uh,
That's no
Suck it
reason to
up,
stop.
princess. Like
Yeah,
life is a reality, and if somebody wants to make a joke on it now or later, the joke's going to be made. So live with it.
it's unreal how people are getting radicalized in the U.S. And again, it I don't even know how you wind that down. Like how do you lower the conflict between people? People.
Anytime, anytime there's a reason to distract in the media, it seems little incidences became really huge incidences to distract, like you said, from Gaza, the genocide going on there, the leveling of buildings, the humanitarian issues. It's appalling. And yet, some, activist is shot, and it's getting more coverage than issues that are hurting hundreds of thousands of people. Where's the priorities, folks?
Anyways, too bad that guy got shot, but I mean the repercussions have been way out of proportion to what they should be. They should be
Agreed.
talking about gun control. They should be talking about mental health. They should be talking about all the issues that lead up to this problem. Instead, they're talking about late night comics.
Yeah. It's priority, folks, and U.S. priorities are very, very off in my book. So on that note, we got anything more to discuss on this that we're missing?
Well,
No?
I guess if you're talking about And part of this, obviously, with Jimmy Kimmel is censorship.
Yes.
And there's an interesting story out of Holland. One of the Dutch MPs was sent out of Parliament because she wore a dress that had the colors of the Palestinian flag.
Holy shit.
and
I thought
and
they're
you,
pretty liberal over in those countries, but guess
well,
not.
it just goes to show you how deep, the divides are. Like, why would Netanyahu feel that he had to do two press conferences to say that Israel had nothing to do with Kirk's assassination? Like,
Hmm.
why would anybody think they were related whatsoever? And the thing is, when you hear that kind of thing, you wonder,
Maybe there
there's a
was
reason.
something.
Yeah, there was a reason why he would jump to
Yeah.
that conclusion. What is it? Like, I don't understand. The propaganda and the hate is so, it's unbelievable.
Well, and it always seems to me religion is at the root of it all. So I think many people should be reassessing what their religious values are, because this is the showcase of what religion and power is all about, controlling governments and people.
Now, now, and if you think of other distractions that have happened as a result of this, the UN voted to recognize uh, Palestine,
Palestine, yeah.
and the
No
Americans
news.
vetoed it again. The
Yeah,
Americans vetoed it again,
yeah.
and they veto it on the basis they're claiming it was biased against Israel and in favor of Hamas. Well, it's got nothing to do with Hamas. It's got to do
I
with the
think Hamas
Palestinian
has been
people.
pretty much wiped out. I mean, after bombing them in Qatar, I don't think anybody's going to step up to negotiate with Israelis, because they're just going to be executed summarily. So,
Or the Americans anywhere in the world. Why would the Iranians talk to them
yeah,
when they bombed them in the conference?
no.
You know, the the Americans have lost their way, and I don't know
Well,
what it
they
is.
really lost their way. They've always been a little bit out there. We just see it as the total rise of it to the level where there's no hiding the facts anymore.
Well,
This is what
gunboats
the
in
U.S.
Venezuela.
is about.
I mean, gunboat diplomacy kind of went out. You know, at least a couple of decades ago, you would
Yeah.
think. But
Need
no,
a
here they are.
distraction, blow up a fisherman. There's
Yeah.
no evidence, so I can claim there was drugs in his boat and he was a drug dealer. I mean, how criminal is that? I mean, in international waters, they ain't even in U.S. waters. So I think that's pretty much as illegal as it gets. And there will be some ramifications someday for that. The U.S., you got to remember, the U.S. has totally shown the world what it really stands for, because the people of the U.S. are not trying to stop any of these acts. They're allowing them, they're wanting them, and they're behind their president. 77 million people or more support Trump, and that shows that the Americans are in support of this, and they're not trying to stop it in any meaningful way. I mean, they got a Senate and a House. They could put pressure on their representatives to act and uphold the law and the system, but they're not making any attempts of that. So there tells you the true values of Americans, and that's the bottom line, folks. I
you
think it's
got
the
you got to
end.
love how they characterize the strike on the vote. Trump calls it a lethal kinetic strike placed placed on his orders, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and it was the U.S. Southern Command's area of responsibility, a region that encompasses 31 countries in South and Central America and the Caribbean. So
Well,
they're
Trump is immune to prosecution for criminal acts. That's why he
well,
claims that he authorized it. But you know what? There's also other laws that say you don't have to follow orders of your commander when you know it's in violation of law. So there are some officers that are willing and participating with Trump's military takeover of the U.S. and the willingness to commit criminal crimes in international waters. So that should warn us, folks, that these military leaders are going along with Trump's trying to take over the U.S. as a fascist state.
And the thing is, how he claims that they were on a well-known drug route to America. Well, they're on the water.
Yeah, pretty easy to board and take them over and show us the evidence. I mean, we are an evidence-based world, aren't we? But I guess not anymore. It's fascism.
They're
And
target
all you have
practice.
to do is blow them up, and there's no evidence. I can lie all I want. So it's a
They're
state of
target
lies.
practice. It's unreal.
Well, the U.S. is full of liars, and their representatives are liars. They are not to be trusted. And blowing up boats on the water, that's just the start of it, folks. Well, you already see it in the streets where they're arresting anybody of skin color and shipping them off, and you have no rights. They're taking away the rights of people who are legitimate citizens of the U.S. So at what point is the Civil War an all-out war? That's the only question we have to ask. When are you taking back the U.S.? It shouldn't be MAGA. It's when are you taking back the U.S.? The U.S. will never be great again. There's no MAGA. You can't make the U.S. great ever again. So when are you taking back the U.S.? And that should be the movement. Take back the U.S. TBUS. Take back U.S. Get that movement coined and get going on it, folks. On that note, I'm pretty well talked out. Subscribe, like, tell us if you have some more insights into this. Write in the comments. We'll try to have open discussions on any of the points. Make sure you subscribe. And tell your friends to subscribe. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Subscribe to the channel, give us a like, and please share the video. Don't be afraid to share this commercial with your friends too.